Okay, what we're going to do is cover this afternoon is work with the file system of our server, creating directories, creating files, working with some of the attributes of them. Actually, I'm just going to be showing you some of the attributes. We're not going to be dealing a lot with attributes, but mainly with creating, deleting, navigating the directory structure. We're not going to be using Windows Explorer. That is something we'll come with later on when we actually have a client and a client software connecting to our server. Right now we're going to be acting as if we're remotely connected to our server through the web browser. Last week we used Remote Manager to create volumes and work with all that. We'll be using the same tool today to be working with it so we can see how we can manage our server remotely if we're not directly connected to our server. Okay, I should get my virtual machines running. Start with my server. If you've been playing with your server, make sure you revert back to a snapshot. In fact, I better make sure that I'm on the right snapshot. Volume's good. And I'm going to power that on. This will be a shorter class today in that what I'm covering, it's going to be, I'm just going to point it out, show it to you, and then let you practice as much as you want with it. So it's not going to be real extensive and a lot of information, just because it is a little bit different than what you typically be using for creating and deleting files and directories. So I'll get the server started. Something I've been noticing is that some people on occasion are having hard times connecting their client to their server, even through the web browser. They can't ping it anymore. Kind of find out they're using the client for other classes, and so they're switching IP addresses, changing from NAT to bridged. That's fine if you keep your same client between computer classes. Just remember what settings you need to change for that. You can even make snapshots for that. It's really, really easy to clone a machine. And if you want help with that, just let me know. But you can take a machine, actually make it exactly the same as another one. So I would strongly recommend that you would have different clients for different classes so that you can really keep them straight and have to worry about changing of IP addressing or network changes. And so that's coming along. So I'm going to start up my workstation. If you want to follow along as we're going through these activities, you're certainly welcome to today. If you're running into some problems though, the technical issues like your server is not acting right, or you can't connect to your you can't connect through your browser to your server, hold off on those issues until we have a break, and I'll try to help you through those individually or during lab time. Rid of that picture. Okay, so now I'm going to open up my Google Chrome, my web browser. The home page is my server. You probably should have been in this direction many times already, so you should feel kind of comfortable. Under Management Services, we're going to go to Remote Manager. Sometimes also to be aware of, you could in fact start up your client or try to access your server too quickly, and you can actually access the web part of the server, but a services available may be empty. It means one of two things. One is your server is not completely running yet. It's not all the way up and all the services are running. The other thing is that in fact you can't connect to your server. You're going to say, well, I got to the home page. It's very possible that you can't connect to your server and still get the home page because this may be cached in your browser. But if you ever go to Management Services and then nothing shows up here, that means that you are in fact, not connected or it's not running all the way. Go to Remote Manager. We'll get the site certificate warning. We want to proceed anyway. And we're logging in. For this class, we're using LTC as our password. And it brings up to this main area. You should be pretty familiar with this. In fact, you should have a data volume and a home volume created for today. Any questions so far? Everybody has a server up and running, and any issues? Okay, good. I'm sorry, Todd? I clicked on Remote Manager, and this would just be the home, the main screen of Remote Manager.
So System Administrator Data Home.
Sysadmin Data Home is what you most likely should have. If you have other volumes as you're playing, that's perfectly fine. You know, but you should at least have a data and a home volume. We'll be working almost exclusively on the data volume today. So go into the data volume to see what's on it. I can click on data. These being web-based, these are all hyperlinks. If I click on data, it brings me into the root of the volume that I'm working with. Okay, now this is where I want to start talking about just directories and subdirectories in general. And once we get to that part. We often can use there's two different main ways of drawing out directory structures. And one way, let's see if I can do this here. One way is here's my C drive, and then kind of use a horizontal method, where on my C drive I might have a docs folder and maybe something for pictures, and I don't know, maybe something for the operating system. What's nice about this kind of example is that you can see kind of the hierarchy, that docs and pics and OS are in fact all, it's not very good docs, sorry, are all at the same level. If I have subdirectories underneath here, they could be broken down something like this, where I have maybe family pictures and maybe vacation pictures. It's really easy to see that vacation is underneath pics, and that you know, as the flow goes down this way. Under documents, I could break it down, you know, into work or personal, or however you want to break things down. It's a nice, easy flow that way. Often, though, we don't use this directory structure to work with directories. A lot of times we'll end up using the, oops, don't do that. So the top-down approach, a vertical approach, where we start with C up on top, and then underneath C, we'll have a docs folder. And then underneath docs, I might have my personal and my work. Also under C, I might have my pics. And way down the bottom, I'll try to squeeze in an operating system. Now this is what you see in Windows Explorer. In fact, let me try to bring that up real quick. If I have the, the view on the side, if I'm looking at, documents, or I'll go on the computer a little bit more. You can see it sort of listed this way. What gets a little confusing when we do work with this, though, is that often we won't see it directly or clearly on here, where, let me grab a different color here. Writes and everything are going to flow down into a directory. So if I end up doing something in the docs directory, it's going to affect my personal and my work folders as well underneath there. And that makes perfect sense. Where often we get stuck, though, is if we apply writes or something at docs, we're going to say, oh yeah, that's going to flow down to pics and operating system as well. And they don't. It is under it when we're looking at the horizontal, but they're all even. And so, you know, it's a little bit clearer being able to see it this way, but realize that this picture and this picture are identical. So that is not the case. It doesn't flow down through that way. So just working with directories, we'll probably end up drawing it this way, but we're going to have to keep remembering that it really is, you know, sort of going back that way. Another thing to remember is just how we name them. We call them directories, we call them folders, we call them subdirectories, we call them subfolders, we call them, you know, all kinds of different things. I will be using them interchangeably. I might be using folders sometimes, subdirectories or whatever. So just realize that it is all the same. So please, you know, use the lab time to practice the things. Okay. Now that we're sure about that idea, let's talk about just in general of how we organize things. How are things organized? Has anybody ever organized? How many of you have Legos?
Anymore? Or did? I still do. My kids hate.
Okay. How many of you ever had Legos? Okay. How do you sort Legos the proper way?
Color.
Yeah, you sort it by size. So all the 2x4s, the 1x4s, the 1x8s, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then by color. That's the proper way, right?
Yeah.
Well, Sean said that, well, he does it by color first. And then he does it by size and shape. So which one's right?
Both.
Both are right? Can we have both right?
You can do both and make both result in the same outcome.
Kind of. Actually, they do. You end up with individual blocks of the same size and shape, all by color. It's just a matter of how you sort them first. How many of you have all your documents in one folder? Nobody does? So you all split them up? Okay. What's the proper way of splitting up files and folders?
Whatever works for you.
Whatever works for you. So some people might have a documents folder, some people might have a games folder, a music folder, underneath music broken down by genre, by country western, and by blues and whatever. And then we have other people that, you know, don't even have those kinds of folders. They're just going to have, hey, documents and sort of a lot of different documents, whether they're legal documents or health documents or records and so on. Think of when we're splitting them up. How many of you tend to be, you have lots of folders, sort of very broad, so you have lots of folders right off the root, that you just break things up. Kind of, it's not very deep. If you think of an organizational structure, not very deep. It's a flat structure. How you do that? How many have a very deep structure where you have few folders and then a few folders and a few folders and a few folders under that, and you could go 6, 7, 8, 9 deep pretty easily? Why do you do that? Just curious.
It looks neater.
It looks neater.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there are some thoughts to that.
I know.
One is that if you can see everything on a page, you don't have to scroll through it. It's easier to scroll, not to drill down and get to the right folder. So yes, it's under education, and then under LTC, and then under spring or fall 2012, and then Novell, and whatever it's going to be. So it's really easy to do it that way. There are times that you might have it very broad though and very shallow. It really depends on what you need. A lot of times we end up having our directory structure very closely associated with our organizational structure. If it matches the organization, the file system just works out really, really well because the same people work in the same areas. So if you have a very deep or very hierarchical type organization, you typically have a very deep hierarchical file system. If you have a very shallow or very narrow band of management and of departments, but just lots of different ones right off the top, then you probably have that same kind of directory structure. When we talk about directory structures and matching with organizational structures later on, Right now, I want you to come up with your own directory structure of something, though. Something we could do together as a class, something we could implement for sort of practice. Something that could just be broken down, hierarchical. Legos would be a good one, but think of something else like plants, animals, teams, sports, any kind of interest in anything. Any ideas on any topics that you want to do? Any? Anybody? What's that?
I think V said he wants to sing to the class.
How about the NFL?
The NFL.
No.
You can go down by AFC.
Okay.
There's only like 2 teams.
Then
There's only like 2 teams.
NFC East, West.
Okay, we'll do the NFL. Boy, I cannot write on here very well. Maybe I should use the projector.
Yeah, maybe you should. It's getting pretty bad.
It's off. It's kind of like the Walmart signature thing. It doesn't match up where you're writing.
No, it doesn't. It's kind of weird.
Okay, under NFL, what do we have?
AFC, NFC. And it's behind.
They just don't match up. Okay, then what?
AFC East.
Oh, okay.
Central and West.
Okay, NFC.
Oh, and then there's North and South, right? Oh no, they don't have that anymore. I don't think. No, not for the NFC. It'll still be East, Central, and West.
What do they have?
Because they have the NFC East, but they have like the North, right? The North. So it's.
Maybe we should choose a sport that we know.
I do know it.
You know this? Okay, I don't know. I don't know
How
it.
they break up their division because it's screwed.
So AFC is East, Central, and West, and NFC is East, South, and West.
No, it's still East, Central, and West. They're both Central.
Too far. Okay. So as you can see, it's going to break it down, and then underneath there, we can actually have individual teams. Then I take it, and so you can see that'd be a really good hierarchical structure to work with. We'll eventually come back to this, so we will work with that. Right now, I'm going to take you into the server and actually show you how to do it on the server, of how to work with some of the things. Let's go back to the server. I'm in the data volume right now. It's always good to be watching up on top in this title bar up on here. It's going to show you exactly what volume you're in and then what subdirectories you're underneath there. It doesn't have the Windows Explorer window on the left-hand side to show you the hierarchical, sort of showing you the different paths that you're going up and down. So you kind of have to know it. And again, being very observant on top because it's easy to get misguided. The first thing you want to learn how to do is create directories. There's no right-clicking on here. It's web browser based, so we don't have that. We do everything through icons and through links. This is a link, obviously. These are links. These are links also. These icons underneath the information column, the info column. If you're familiar with DOS or Windows or working with any of those, or even Linux, you have the dot and dot dot directories. What's the dot dot directory? Go up a level. It's the parent directory. It actually refers to the parent directory. So if you do cd dot dot, I'm changing directories to the parent directory. What does a single dot mean? The current level. The current level. So this dot represents the root of the data volume. And we're going to be doing everything through these icons as far as creating, deleting, renaming, and that kind of stuff. So if I click on the info icon next to there, I have different information that I can work with on this data volume. The first thing is it talks about the owner. Who's the owner of this? And it is supervisor, which is kind of interesting. It's because it was created during the server install, and we're doing it at a certain level. On the creation, date and time, and then we talk about rights. We're not talking about rights today at all, but this is where we'd be working with rights and where we'd be using heritage rights filters and that kind of stuff. Later on, we'll also be talking about file space limits, and right now we can see how much space is being used, and right now there's 0 bytes being used. Trustee information goes right along with the rights. So I can add trustees, that can be containers, organizational units, users, groups, roles, and so on. But that's not what we're working with today. We're working with just creating, deleting, renaming, and working with that. So on the very bottom is create the subdirectory. So just for example, if I don't go back, I can create a subdirectory called NFL. And when I do that, I now have an NFL directory. When I have an NFL directory, you can see I also have an info icon next to it, and I have the link for the NFL itself. They do two different things. The one, if I click on NFL, will take me into the NFL directory, and I can see that up on top by being in Data NFL. Now you can see I also have a double dot on here as a link. Now I don't have a link under dot because that's going to itself. It's kind of silly. But I will click on the double dot, and that takes me back up to the root of there. If I click on the info icon next to NFL, that doesn't take me into the NFL directory and its contents. That takes me to the NFL information page. So I'm working with the NFL directory now because I clicked on the icon next to NFL. Now the same thing's up on top. Admin's the owner, effective rights, space limits, trustees, or whatever. But way down the bottom, I still have this create subdirectory option. And this is where I would be typing in AFC. So now I have an AFC directory. If I want to create another directory in the current directory, where would I click? Next to the dot. So I click next to the dot because that's the current directory. And so I start with AFC, and I'm going to do NFC. And now I have my two directories. Now again, to navigate, when I'm navigating up and down, I can click on AFC. And when I click on AFC, I see that in the AFC directory. If I want to go up a level, I click on the double dot. If I want to go down to the NFC, I click on the NFC. I can click back up to go to the NFL, and ultimately I can go back above NFL to the root of the data volume. If you notice, I don't have a double dot here because there's no parent directory. You are in the root. You can say, well, I still have a home volume and I still have a sys volume. Doesn't that take me up to that level? No, directory structures only go to the root of a drive. These are essentially different drives, and so you're not going to be able to see anything above that. If you want to click back and see all your volumes, the easiest way is just to click on volumes on the left-hand side. When I click on volumes on the left-hand side, it shows me all my volumes. I click back on the data, and there's my NFL directory. Just to create a couple more, I'm going to go into the AFC directory, and I want to create the 3 divisions. East, West, and Central. So pretty easy to do it. It's a matter of knowing where to click, finding that field, entering that information, and then hitting click Create Directory. So it's pretty simple. Now this is the AFC. I want to go back to the NFC and do the exact same thing. So I click the double dot to take me back to the NFL, and I click on NFC to bring me in the NFC directory. Once again, I'm using the icon next to the dot. Scroll on down to get to Central. Click on it again. East. And hit enter. And one more time for west. Central, east, and west. And once again, it's just getting used to navigating, moving up and down. NFC East, parent directory, parent directory, parent directory, all brings you back to the root. Is it working?
What's under AFC?
AFC?
Nothing?
Do we have to have these? Or
I have east, central, and west.
it should be northeast, southwest, and down.
It should be north, south, east, and west?
Yes,
Okay.
There's 4, but whatever.
We're going to do east, central, west because that's what I wrote down, and no one disagreed with it while we had the class discussion. So if you don't speak up, you snooze, you lose. I commend Chris for at least speaking and coming up with the terms. I'm not commending the rest of you for pointing out anything else out. Is it that intimidating? Am I that scary? Yeah? No.
It's after lunch. It's tired.
How do you delete one if you did it wrong?
Okay, I'm glad you asked. How do you delete a directory? So let's go under AFC and we'll create a, I don't know. We'll create a northern division. Okay, and we realize, oh no, there's no northern division. How do I get rid of that? Well, if I want to do something with the northern division, what do I click on? The icon next to northern. So I click on northern, and this lets me see the information about it, and it lets me create a subdirectory in northern, but if you notice, it also deletes the directory and contents. That button is on here as well. Be careful, because if it had subfolders, it would delete the entire subfolder structure and all of its contents as well. So delete the directory and contents. Will, are you sure you want to delete data NFL AFC Northern? Yes, I do. Very simple to do.
Can you show that one more time?
I can. I'll just call it folder this time. So now I have central, east, folder, west. If I want to get rid of folder, I click on the icon next to it, or the link next to folder. I don't want to click on folder because it takes me into the folder. Now I could actually do it from here. This icon right here is identical. It's going to take you to the exact same place as clicking on it here. It is the properties page for that folder. So whether you click on the properties on the left-hand side next to folder or go into the folder and click on it, it's the exact same location. And it tells you that, data NFL AFC folder. Way down the bottom, third from the bottom button, delete directory and its contents. Delete directory and contents. I click on that. It verifies you want to delete the folder. Yes, I do. You good? Let's go with, now which one's the questionable one? The AFC?
All of them should be northeast, west, and south.
Okay, so we don't want central.
Central should be north.
So we should change that to north. Okay, let's click on the icon next to central. And we can rename a directory as well. I type in north, and now I have north, east, and west. If we really, really want that south, we can click on the icon next to the dot and type in south. Now I have north, south, east, and west for the AFC. Going back to the NFC, I can rename central to north, and I can add south by clicking on the icon next to dot. North, south, east, and west. How do you get back to where?
I'm under AFC. How do I get back to NFC?
You click on the double dot.
Double dot.
The
NFC.
double dot takes you up a directory.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead and just take a few minutes. Create some directories. Navigate up and down the directories. Delete some directories. Again, navigate, create, delete, navigate. Just take a couple minutes and do that. We're not going to do the teams underneath the divisions right now, just because they're more like users. And that actually would be a good model for later on when we work with users. When we think of departments or people within departments, of how we organize them. So actually we might end up using the NFL as a good structure for later on. Okay, the next thing I want to cover is just very, very briefly going over directory attributes. Attributes, who's familiar with file attributes? Like hidden, system, archive, read-only. Yeah, directories have, they're all based on the file system. So every file system has different attributes for their files and for their directories. When I look at the attributes of the directories on a Novell server, we would think that we do everything underneath this icon. So like if I click on NFL, if I want to work with the NFL attributes, I click over here. But I don't have the attributes here. They're actually on the same line as the directory, way over on the right-hand side. It says attributes. In fact, here's an example. When we created the volume, it created this volume TDF file. So you can see that there's file attributes and directory attributes. We'll get to file attributes when we talk a little bit more about files. We're not going to change any of these directory attributes, but I'm going to just go over them briefly just so you know that they're there and what they do. I typically don't work with attributes at the file level or directory level. If I work on the server, I work with everything with trustee rights. I say that this user, this group, this organizational unit has access to this file or this folder. Once you start working with attributes, attributes override any trustee assignments or any rights that are given. So if I say that you can write to a file, and then at the attribute level I say that you can't, it gets really messy and confusing. Just do your rights right. You know, if you do your rights, that's all the security that you need. Yes?
I forgot to put in NFL. Is there a way that if you have the NFC and AFC created, you can merge them under NFL, or do you have to redo it all?
Excellent question. One limitation of using Remote Manager is that you're not able to move directories. So you're not able to copy them, move them. This is very, very basic file management stuff, which is create, delete, and rename. That's about all that you get to do. So if you forgot a level of like NFL and you put AFC and NFC without an NFL in there, you'd actually have to recreate the structure using this. Now, again, this is as if you're not on the network. You're at this remote location. You're not able to get direct access to your network, like through a virtual private network or whatever, or you're just using some kind of device as a web browser on it, just to quickly get a directory structure up there or delete it or modify it. That's kind of what you're looking for here. This isn't how you do day-to-day management. You'd be using Windows and Windows Explorer. Then it's just a dragging and dropping, and it's very, very, very easy through Windows Explorer. I'm going to show that to you at some point, but it's not something that you really have to be taught of how to do file management in Windows. Using the web browser, yeah, I need to teach you how to do this just because it is so different. It's a great, great tool, though, to have as a resource, anywhere, anytime access to all of your stuff. Okay. Oh, attributes, directory attributes. If I click on, you can see this is a link. It's underlined. Each of those dashes are actually different attributes. If they're on, kind of like down here, you'll see that the archive attribute is on. So none of these attributes are on. If I put an attribute on, I'll take a safe one, like archive, and click OK. You can see that the archive attribute is on. Everything else is off. Going through them, the system attribute is the first one is the system attribute. And these are things like for system files, system folders. When we talk about system, we typically mean operating system or something deep level that's working on. Don't click on that and click OK, because the system attribute is also hidden. So if something's marked as hidden, they don't want people to see it. Another limitation of using the web browser here is that if something is marked as hidden, like this checkbox would be, it's hidden. You can't see it. If you can't see it, you can't access it. Well, how would you be able to access it? The only way you'd be able to access that is, again, through Windows Explorer, and then you tell Windows to show hidden files and folders. That's the only way that you're able to do it, and then you can unhide it. So there are some limitations. Be careful. Archive, it tells you that the file needs to be archived. It's the whole archive, same as a directory. Same as a file. If something changes in it, when it marks the archive bit is on, a backup utility comes across, says, hey, this archives bit is on, and I need to back this up. After it backs it up, it turns off the archive attribute, and you don't have to worry about that anymore. Something else changes, it turns the archive bit back on, gets backed up the next time around. If there's no archive bit, the backup program just skips past it. Immediate purge. Immediate purge is the ability to get rid of files immediately and not go to the equivalent of the recycle bin. When you delete a file on the server, it doesn't get deleted, it gets put into a salvage area, and we'll be showing salvage a little bit later on. In some instances, you might want to immediately purge it. And it could be for sensitive information. You know, it might be a place that when that user deletes this, it should be gone. And it should be gone immediately. Or in the cases of like some systems, email systems are a great example of that. Email takes actual messages, dumps them into folders, another process grabs them and copies them someplace else. We don't keep those files. I mean, you would never salvage or recover an individual mail message file within a massive system like this. They're encrypted. You wouldn't even know what they're named. You wouldn't know which file you've been looking for. If somebody says, oh, my mail message didn't go through, you wouldn't be looking at that granular level. If you don't purge the files and you kept deleting things, they just keep being saved there. It's kind of like the Windows recycle bin. A deleted file still taking up system resources. It's taking up disk space. It's actually being kept part of the directory structure. And so it's taking up memory, because memory is all your directory structures stored into memory while it's being used. So getting rid of stuff and purging them is a good idea. It's sort of like emptying a recycle bin. Don't compress. The server has the ability to compress files. Say it hasn't been used for a while. It hasn't been accessed for a while. Let me compress it. It sort of does a zipping on the fly. If you need the file again, it just decompresses it on the fly. So it doesn't really make a big difference. It just might take a little bit longer to open that file. Migrating is actually taking that document or the contents of this folder and moving it off to another storage, possibly even tape, something slow. Now, it might be a report that I need to keep track of, but I really don't want to keep on the server forever. Get it off the actual physical hard drive onto some kind of external media. When you need the file, you'll click on it and it just says, hey, wait a second, while I retrieve it, it pulls it back in and you can use it. You have options to don't compress and don't migrate. Don't do those functions. The bottom option actually gives you the opposite option of immediately compress. You know, this stuff is just standard reports that run every day. Nobody ever looks at them, but you know, they're huge, but we can compress them, especially a text document compresses really, really, really well. So just get them, compress them. If you need them, yeah, you can still open them. It might take a second longer, but it's going to save a ton of disk space. We have a couple inhibits, delete inhibit and rename inhibit. There are some limitations of that and what Windows recognizes, but you do have those options here. And again, I don't do anything with attributes typically, unless under extreme situations do I need to work with something on the attribute level. I just emphasize, get your file rights right. If you have your user rights right, you will not need to use attributes. Make it secure so they think if you don't want them to delete something, then don't let them delete it. So on. Okay, so directory attributes. Definitely careful on the hidden one. The next thing I'm going to talk about is files. And uploading, downloading, renaming, and deleting. It's a little bit early for a break. We're going to take a break anyway. Get you up, get some caffeine, get some exercise, push-ups, jumping jacks, something, just to walk around. So there's not a whole lot to that area. So we'll go through that whole file area. Then we'll actually talk about our organization that we'll be working with and its directory structure, and then how to implement that.